by a flip chart. And also you create a bit more energy when you're standing up like I'm doing now, which is good, and you can transmit that energy to your client. So if you were presenting, you might want to think about how you do that. But let me tell you just a few of my secrets of negotiating. And the number one secret, which is the one people always seem to forget about, is preparation. And I was on a webinar in San Francisco about 3 weeks ago, and a lady called Debbie Hoffman said that most American entrepreneurs do not prepare for a meeting, well, yet alone a negotiation, which is absolutely crazy. So preparing is absolutely vital. And the way I prepare is drawing a mind map straight away. I'm a serial mind mapper. They are absolutely fantastic, and they give you the chance to put all your ideas down on one piece of paper, etc., etc. And so preparation, really preparing, really sussing things out, looking the person up, looking at them on LinkedIn if you're going to network with them, talk to them. So therefore, think about all your preparation. What's the agenda for the meeting? Put the agenda in a structured order so that you've got the key points halfway down the meeting. You write the agenda, then you're in control. You write the minutes, then you're in control of the negotiation and the haggling. Number two is, how do you position yourself? Do you position yourself as an expert? Do you look like an expert? Now, you know, we had some fun. Why did Tim and I dress up today? You know, when we're at home, we dressed up because if you look like an expert, you can charge more. People will believe you more. I remember sitting next to John Vine, who's on this call, and I was dressed in a suit on a BA flight, and he listened to me. He probably wouldn't have listened to me if I'd have been in my jeans and my t-shirt. But when you position yourself, it's very important to think about what your best position is, your target position, the walk away position in your negotiations, and what your alternative position will be in if you do walk away. Now, the real key here is that people don't even consider that in their preparation. What's your dream position? What do you expect to get? And where are you going to leave the table? And if you do leave the table, what will be the alternative? That leads me to first impressions, getting to the meeting early, connecting with the other side, dressing like them, building rapport, etc. And all the small things which are really, really important. They say that in a 60-minute meeting, you should spend 5 minutes connecting and building rapport. That's a big mistake that a lot of people don't make. And I know some of these tips are obvious, but let me tell you, they're so obvious that people generally don't always do them. And my last tip is asking and listening, asking really good, high quality questions, forensic questions, and listening with your 2 ears and your 2 eyes. And I mean, watching the body language, what's coming back, what fun is coming back. And I just wanted to try a little thing with everybody, as we've got 502 people on the call, and I've done this in big audiences. When someone puts the price on the table or suggests you might speak for them for a certain price, the real trick at that point is to flinch. And this is how a flinch goes. Sharp intake of breath and a head scratch. That's a bit more expensive than I was expecting to pay. That's all you have to say. Flinch. That's a bit more expensive. So I want everybody to do this now, and I'm going to check on whether you're doing it or not. Ready. Head scratch. That's a little bit more expensive. And if you don't flinch, you're not going to drive them down to their walk away position. And it's expected in certain businesses and certain circumstances that we negotiate. Now, in England, people aren't very brave to negotiate, but the further you go into Europe and the further south you go into Europe, the more likely it is that that will be expected. And for the people that are scared to negotiate, I've produced what I call my mature student discount card. And I know some people on this call have got them, because everyone gets one when they come on my seminars. And it's a bit of fun, but it's an anchor, as we say, to remind people, if you don't ask, you don't get. So a number of tips there for you. And if you don't ask, you don't give the other person the opportunity to say yes. Now it's back. Now it's back to Macon in Georgia. I probably haven't said that quite right, Paul. I do apologise for that. But I think you've got a poll question for us, Paul.
It rhymes with bacon.
Bacon.
Tim, that's what I said to Derek yesterday.
Yeah.
So he is a lifelong learner that is occasionally a slow learner.
Whatever the question, bacon is the answer.
All right, now we have to fill in how many actionable items we've got. So that's lots of fun. And Paul, while people are filling in this questionnaire about ideas, can you briefly summarize the answer to my question is how did people hear about this webinar? I'd be interested to see if the waste of time social media that we did might have added to our attendance.
Well, as a matter of fact, I did count the responses. So we have 70% came from an email or newsletter, 20% came from some form of social media contact, or one came from a Google search. So LinkedIn was the primary mode. And then 10% came from other sources such as direct conversations, lifelong friendships, etc.
Good, wonderful, perfect. Very good.
Okay, now remind me, it's back to me now, is it?
Well, let's just, if we look at the poll, we have 37% 1 to 3 actionable ideas, 37 4 to 6, and 26 so many they can't count. All right, wonderful.
Well, I might just say at that point again, and forgive me for saying it again, food banks, if you've taken that many tips away, perhaps you would think about the people that don't have enough food at the moment, and on our behalf and for you, putting something extra in that food bank, please. And Patricia and I were discussing it yesterday. We were surprised in really affluent areas, there are still people very, very hungry, and that should not be happening in 2020.
Now we could see, I don't know if there are any questions that Paul needs to give us after the first round.
Yes, we do have, we can go with one question per speaker, just to keep it going. And so the first question was from Tim's. How do you do a consultation if you're by yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. And what I would do is somehow record how you are applying the information that you got. So you can either videotape yourself, or you can use audio and go back over the audio and review it. Everybody who's ever tried to better themselves in public speaking knows that it's extremely difficult to see yourself on video. But just remember, that's what everybody else sees. So yeah, audio or video taping.
All right, thank you. And then we have a question for Gabby. Why did you study NLP?
Because for me, NLP is picking up the best strategies of what works, a bit like I was talking about earlier. And it's something I did anyway, but to learn more quickly and to enhance my understanding of how the brain works, how we as human beings work. Now, I'm the interior designer of the mind, but this is more the architecture of the mind and how it all fits together. So I went to it at a time when I was quite down in confidence. I just had a family, I had a young family, and it just seemed like an obvious thing for me to do. And as a result of it, it quadrupled my business, and I'm now running a multi-million-pound business. So I'm very, very happy that I did it. It's great.
Wonderful. All right, and then we have Graham. If there was one thing people could do to improve their use of the internet, what would it be?
That's a really good question, because I could say, well, you could Google that and see what answers you get, and there'd be probably several billion answers to it. But I think the most important thing to do, and the kind of problem that I see with many people, both personally and in business, is to do what you did in life before the internet came along. And before the internet came along, you had a routine. You had a routine every day to answer the mail. The mail would come into the office at a particular time. Now that routine has disappeared. And so consequently, you just check email all the time. It's like having letters drifting in and out of the letterbox in your office all the time. Set a routine. Do emails once a day at that time. Do your social media once a day. The reason people keep dipping in and out of social media is because their brain doesn't know that they've done it. They can't remember when they last did it. You know that you clean your teeth every morning and every night. You don't have to remember it because it's a routine. If you did social media once every morning at the same time, or once every afternoon at the same time, you wouldn't dip in and out all day. You'd be much more focused and much more productive. Go back to routines.
All right, great. Thank you. And then for Derek, we have from Janice Lipton, what is the opposite of the reaction about the money when you are asked what you charge and they either do not respond at all or they say it's too expensive?
Well, okay, first of all, I try not to say how much I charge until I found out a lot about the other side, because if we're selling value-added services rather than transactional services, Janice, we want to keep our price as high as we can. And now we're working all over the world. We can work all over the world and work with people on Zoom. We don't know what their expectations are. So we somehow need to drill down and start up here if we have to at our best position, and then find out what they're expecting to pay. And the way I would do that when I'm pressed, I would say, well, my normal fee for doing something like this, to include the books, the extra mentoring, and every other extra service that I can throw in, would be, and that's my top price, would be. And the keyword is normal. And I then want to see, and I can see them on Zoom, as Patricia said, that's why you don't want a phone call, you want to see them on Zoom. I can see if they go, whoa, hey, that's a bit expensive. Or if they go, oh, that's okay. Then if they say that's okay, I wish I'd have put a higher price on. Actually, at that point, I was clearly not charging enough, although you've got to close the sale. If they flinch, which is your second question, then I'm going to go, well, actually, for what I'm giving you, then this is a tremendous value, but perhaps you don't want all those services. Perhaps you don't need the books, the workbooks, the follow-up questions that all my other clients like. Perhaps you'd like the bare bones with no briefing beforehand. And if that's the case, then I can sell you a ticket on like Southwest Airlines or something like that. I can send you a cheap ticket and carry your own bags on, etc. So I'm looking to start high and come down if they want the low price. But ideally, you want three prices. And that's why we got best position, target position, walk away, because this is everything and this is with nothing, and you can move in between, but you have to work out what your variables are, and they're the small inexpensive things that you've already produced that you can give away for nothing. Well, not for nothing, but for no fee, but to up the perceived value. I hope that helps. That's a really good question. Paul, there's a question in the chat box that I could answer at the same time if you'll allow me.
Certainly.
Pedro asks, what does TP and AP stand for? BP is best position. TP is your target position. That's generally often when people that don't know how to negotiate start. They start at that lower position, and yet sometimes they can earn more. And what's your walk away position? And I'd say to everybody, have a soft walk away and a hard walk away. So when you found out the information from the other person and they say, oh, that's too expensive, then you might say, well, that's the lowest I can go to today. And what's the key word there? Today, because you might be driving home, you might be having a glass of wine in the evening, and suddenly you think, well, perhaps I could change it round, think outside the box, come up with a different proposition, sleep on it, and then go back to them in the morning and say, well, if you did this for me, then perhaps we could do that for you.
All right.
So,
Oh, sorry.
no, it's all right. I'll just finish actually, Paul. And the other thing is, it is really important, and this comes from neurolinguistics, really important to anchor a high price. Anchor yourself as expensive, look expensive, sound expensive, come across as expensive in whatever you do. The people that dressed 2 people above their rank in business 20 years ago, from a survey that was done at Hull University, it showed that they got promoted quicker than having an MBA. And I queried that statistic, but it appears to be right. So come across, position yourself for success. Back to you, Paul.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. And then finally, for Patricia, do you pre-qualify the people that you give a pretend you've already hired me call to?
I will always do my best to do a search on LinkedIn to find out who they are. If I can, then I send them an email and a connection request on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I will certainly send an email thanking them for the inquiry before we set up a call. Can you, and I'll ask them a few questions about their experience, who they work for, what specifically they need help with. What I have learned is, do not prejudge people. Don't prejudge them. I have made the mistake before. We think by their email address, or if there's a typo in the email. Executives make spelling mistakes because they're working so fast, because they're wasting so much time on the internet. So I just want a conversation. And I believe even if people don't hire us, part of building our reputation is to handle every call respectfully. I will give everybody advice so they walk away from the call better equipped for whatever they have to do, even if they don't hire me. Also, it gives you the opportunity to decide if you would want to work with them. You have the chance, because all of us are lucky enough to be in a position where we have more demand for our time than we have time. That means it's better to leave space for the really qualified clients. Over and out.
Thank you. It's back to me, Paul, I think, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Paul, there is one question in the chat box from Paul Coleman, who's in the Turks and Caicos Islands at the moment. That sounds absolutely fantastic. Maybe when this pandemic's over, I better go over there and answer his question in person. That would be a great idea, Paul. Send me the business class airfare. I always turn left when I get on a plane, not right. That's one of my negotiating tactics. Paul says, how do you handle if you really are pushed to give your price first? Well, I don't actually. I've positioned my business with my books and everything, my websites, in that I want to have a Zoom call with them, as Patricia said, look them in the eye, find out what their needs are. That's it. Because often people's needs are different to what they think their needs are. If they just want a negotiation training, I say to people, well, you can always find someone cheaper than me, someone who's bought a book and written a course out of a book rather than written their own material, used their own experiences, got 30 years of experience and their own stories. Now, we've all got that, although when we're suffering from the imposter syndrome, which it's very easy to do here in the UK in December when it's dark for about 16 hours a day, you need to remind yourself of what you've achieved, how you've done it. And if you haven't positioned yourself, then start doing it now. So if I'm really pushed, and someone, Will Kintish, who's on the call, sent me a lead from a company, thanks Will, but basically they were a procurement company. They wanted me to fill in their procurement forms. And I wrote back to the guy and said, look, I don't do that. What I do is have a half an hour Zoom call with you, which I did. And he liked what I did, but it's going to be about price. I know that from what he said. It's going to be a transaction rather than the value added service, which is what we all should be doing. So that brings us, I think, Patricia, and you're keeping an eye on me, thank you so much, to round 2. And we're about on time, which is fantastic. So this is the second round, and welcome back to Tim Durkin. A big welcome back, because Texas is a big place, and I hear Texans have big ambitions. So I'd just like to tell you something about Tim. I mean, not only is he a speaker and an author, he's a certified Texas barbecue judge, which is fascinating. We don't have any barbecue judges here in the UK. So congratulations on that, Tim, and over to you.
Well, thanks very much. And I also want to thank Paul for pointing out that my camera got a little fuzzy. And the reason for that is that it's part of Zoom's new feature, which is called the Tim Durkin Appearance Improvement Program. But I did unplug and replug, and we're all good to go now. Now, my second point is actually a combination of 2 points that are closely related. Now, they're extremely powerful points. They are actually capable of changing their life. I know this because when I adopted them, they certainly changed mine, and they have gotten me through a number of dicey situations. They are also the cornerstone, the 2 cornerstones of elite performers. And I want to cover them right now. The first one is you must control your thoughts and not let the environment control your thoughts. And what are some examples of environment controlling our thoughts? Which, by the way, if the environment controls your thoughts, it's also going to control your emotions. So an example would be, do you get upset and is your day slightly ruined by the loss of your favorite football team, Arsenal?
Yes, big time.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Or do you find yourself upset by the results of an election, by the weather? A lot of people are upset about the weather. Oh, it's so hot today, I can't stand to do anything, or it's too cold. Then there's also people that are upset by the day of the week. I can't believe it's Monday. I'm no good on Mondays. Or the opposite is, thank God it's Friday. I'm so excited. We're that much closer. Your thoughts are being directed externally. The number 1 director of external thoughts are other people. How often do we give permission for other people to determine how we feel and how we think? That's not what elite performers do. So whenever you find yourself thinking negatively or too far positively, ask yourself, am I in control of my thoughts, or is something else outside of me or someone else other than me controlling our thoughts? Now, the way that you want to make sure that you do this, execute this well, is to make sure that your thoughts are directly synced to what you are currently doing. So your thoughts go with your actions and they're synchronized. Imagine how upset that you would be if you thought that there was a heart surgeon operating on you, and while she is operating on you, she is thinking about how she is going to enjoy Disney Paris or Disney World in Florida with her family starting tomorrow. That would be a very upsetting situation, to think that her thoughts are not synchronized with what she's doing. Elite performers are always focused on what they're doing. If they've got a 10-foot putt, if they have a penalty kick, whatever it is, they're not thinking about anything external to that. They are focused and they are extremely present. Remember, you control your thoughts, not politicians, not anyone else but you. Now, there is something out there that is trying to control your thoughts. And they work very, very hard, and they're very good at it. And that's the media. And the media deals primarily in fear. So one of the things that I would suggest is that if you want to make sure you control your thoughts, stop doom scrolling. There's even a word for this now. If we look at the media and we constantly go through the news, wherever the news is, BBC, Fox, whatever, you'll find that it's not very much positive. There's not very much positive that's being put out there. Control your thoughts. Don't let your external environment control your thoughts. Second part is elite performers are very proactive and hardly ever reactive. They respond instead of react. When Stephen Covey wrote the all-time business best-selling book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he made being proactive the number one, the first of the 7 habits. Now, I spoke with Stephen about that, and he told me, and he tells his class, that he got that idea by studying the works and the life of Viktor Frankl, who spent a great deal of time in horrific conditions in more than one concentration camp. What Frankl discovered was that while his captors could take away all of his freedoms, freedom to eat when he wants, freedom to be with family, freedom to worship, freedom to stand up, sit down, lie down, they had no freedom at all. It was all determined by the captors. But Frankl understood that there is something that he calls the final freedom. The final freedom is our ability to respond to whatever happens to us and respond in a way that will be positive and can lead us closer to, instead of farther from, our goals, our peace of mind, our happiness, if you will. The ability to choose our response, the final freedom, gives us the opportunity to have response ability. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And for anyone that hasn't read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was holed up in a Nazi concentration camp for 5 years and survived because he had a goal. It's one of the most emotional books I've ever read, and not one I wanted to read again because it upset me. I don't like some of the things that happen that people can do to other people. Tim, that's great. And elite performers, I know you've worked with some fantastic actual elite performers.
Elite athletes, elite war fighters, elite in all that. And the 2 cornerstones, they determine how they think, not somebody else. And they will be very proactive instead of reactive. They think before they do things.
Thanks, Tim. And if you're sitting there wondering why we're not talking about budgets and cash flows and COVID and lockdowns, yeah, they are real immediate issues, aren't they? That something has to be done with. But to have a high quality of life and do things that the real high achievers do, it needs something more than that. And if you've got more of these skills, then you'll get much better results anyway, both for you, your family, your life, and the people that you coach and work with. Now I'm going to go back to Gibraltar, or should I say I'm going back to Hampshire in the UK, to Gabrielle Gachet. Let me tell you a little bit about Gabby again. Gabby was born on the Rock of Gibraltar, a UK territory for 300 years, which sits at the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. Gibraltar is famous for its colony of wild apes. And having been to Gibraltar several times and been up the rock and been jumped at by these wild apes, I think they could benefit from some of Gabby's advice, actually, but they clearly hadn't taken it when I was there. Welcome back, Gabby.
Thank you very much indeed, Derek. Yes, those apes, they're wonderful. So I'm talking about this in the second part, being the author of your own success and really building on what Tim's talked about. I'm loving the doom scrolling. I'm going to be borrowing that phrase, if that's okay, Tim. Love it.
It's not mine. You're welcome to it.
Yeah. Where is your focus at the moment? What are you focusing on? Is it the presidential fiasco? Is it Brexit or lack of? Is it COVID? And the media is marvelous. And as Tim says, it is all about creating and eliciting an emotional response. But if you think about the emotions that it elicits, as the doom scrolling suggests, it is about doom and gloom and fear and anxiety and frustration. And those emotions and those states are not conducive to being successful. So if you want to be successful, what are the states that are likely to help you? And it will be individual for each and every one of you. And it probably isn't just one, it will be a whole conglomerate of various different states. Gurdjieff talks about the different I's, and it could be that you want more resilience. It could be that you want to be more energetic. It could be that you want more confidence. So one of the best ways that I've come across, and I use it on a regular basis, I work in my little shed, as my husband calls it, in the garden, and I have a number of steps to go up to get to my office, and each step has a different state on different days, so that I am stepping up into my success on a daily basis, and each step has a different state. So my suggestion to you is that you do write down what are the states that are going to be useful to you today for this particular meeting that you're going into, or the talk that you're going into, or the negotiation that you're going into, and write each state down on a post-it. Now, I have many clients that I coach and they go, yeah, but I'm feeling really fearful at the moment, or really tired. I can't remember a time. Okay, that's fine. Let's just play. Let's imagine.